I'm Tony Fabrizio, with Pinellas County's Marketing and Communications Department. Thank you for joining us. We have an important Facebook Live program for you today. It deals with the convergence of COVID-19, our young people, and the risk of substance abuse. I'm joined by Marvin Coleman. He's the Vice President of Legislative Community Affairs and National Training Initiatives for Operation PAR, and has been with the organization for more than 20 years. Hello again, Marvin.
Hello, how are you today?
Good, good. Nice to talk to you again. Tell us a little about your background and how you came to work for Operation PAR.
Well, my background, I've worked actually in the field of social services for quite some time, since the early 90s, basically. It started when I was in the military at the academy in Colorado Springs, working with cadets who may have experimented with substance use, substance abuse. And then upon discharging from the military and coming back to Tampa, which is my home, I started working for Charter Behavioral Health Systems, which was a very large private mental health substance abuse agency located here, but nationally, it was a national program. So I started in the field early. My initial background was actually in medicine, emergency medicine, especially coming from the military. But the side as far as in counseling and working with teens especially was something that really stuck. It was something I was passionate about, and that's what kind of led me into the field. So working in the field initially, I worked on adolescent programs, doing programming there, and then in the needs assessment departments, doing assessments and such, and then in their call centers. So one part of my background is developing call centers for social service organizations. I worked for the Charter Behavioral Health Systems in their national office out of Atlanta, their national call center there. And that's what really brought me here to Operation PAR, was helping to develop the call center back in 98, which seems like a millennium ago. but developing the call center there and then having an opportunity to do several things working here with Operation PAR.
Mm-hmm. Good, good. And I don't know how many people are familiar with Operation PAR. Tell us a little bit about it. I know it's a national organization. Tell us a little bit about it and also about the services offered here by the local organization.
Well, it's almost, I tell people sometimes we're the best kept secret sometimes here in Pinellas County, a very large, well-respected organization right here in Pinellas County. We're actually celebrating 50 years of service to the community this year. We were founded in 1970 by Shirley Coletti. And our founding is kind of the heart of what our organization has been and is currently today, because it was started by a mom who basically came home from work like a lot of moms do and found that her daughter was experiencing or maybe possibly under the influence of something, looked for help and tried to find help and could not find it. So basically created a support group for parents called Operation Parental Awareness and Responsibility. And really that program now, 50 years later, through great work and through the research and everything else that we have done in the field with a host of other great support systems, social service agencies, has basically grown to roughly 17 physical sites, 49 programs spread over about 7 counties. So it shows what a determined mom can definitely do. And the treatment that we provide here at Operation PAR, especially in Pinellas County, which is our nucleus, a good majority of our services are concentrated in Pinellas County, but we provide everything from medical detoxification for individuals who are under the influence or experiencing the physical effects of substances to be able to get that substance out of their system in order to prepare them to move to the next step, which would be treatment. We provide outpatient treatment services for individuals who are working and need that additional counseling support system by doing an outpatient program. But we also have residential treatment programs here in Pinellas County as well, too. We have the Shirley Coletti Academy for Behavioral Change, which is our adolescent residential treatment program on 54th Avenue in St. Petersburg. We have a large residential program at our Largo campus, which actually has one of the greatest programs in the country that's nationally known, which is our Women and Children's Village, which allows an opportunity for women who are experiencing a substance abuse issue to come into treatment and bring her children with her under certain guidelines in order for them all to get the support that they need to recover as a family. Because as we know, in treatment and families that are impacted by substance abuse truly impacts the entire family. So therefore, recovery mode is oftentimes something that needs to be wrapped around the entire family. So we do have that residential programming that's available. We have a number of prevention programs as well too that operate in Pinellas County school systems, as well as in a few other programs down in South St. Petersburg that really focus in on getting in early, intervention and prevention efforts to, especially with at-risk populations, to keep individuals, especially kids, from getting involved with substances right on the front end. And then we have a few medically assisted patient service programs that allow an opportunity for individuals, especially who are struggling with an opiate addiction, to be able to get the help that they need through an outpatient basis and through a medication maintenance program in order to stabilize their lives and get back on track. So a number of things that we do here in Pinellas County. Really proud to work for this organization.
Very good information. And the bottom line is there's a lot of help out there for people who need it and people who seek it and people who want it.
That's one thing I definitely want to say is that Pinellas County is rich in resources for people. If you're having some problem, you want to get help, there are a number of programs out there that can help you. So we pride ourselves on partnering with a lot of those agencies, sister agencies, because of how closely we work together. And it's just a matter of really being able to access the information.
If you just joined us, we're joined today by Marvin Coleman. He's a vice president with Operation PAR. It's a national organization with offices in Pinellas County. They focus on substance abuse. Marvin, this is a trying time for many of us. People have lost incomes. They've had loved ones get sick. I had a 93-year-old uncle passed away from COVID last week.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. People have had their lives changed. Our young people have had their lives turned upside down, really. They've been isolated from school and their friends and their teachers. Many have had to give up extracurricular activities. Seniors are missing their graduation. You think about your graduation and everything that went with that. And they're missing all of that. And so experts like yourself say that teens are at greater risk of substance abuse or abuse during this period of increased isolation. So for parents who are trying to pay close attention to signs, what can they look for to see to recognize a problem?
Well, I will say, that one of the things, especially you mentioned the amount of stress that is happening currently right now in the world, and stress is definitely one of those triggers, especially for teens. And some of the things that parents, and what makes it especially difficult at this time, is that some of the things that teens are displaying currently right now looks like normal teen behavior. Isolation being a big thing. Normally, outside of the COVID-19 realm of things, some of the things that you might tell a parent who's maybe concerned about their child and whether or not they're experimenting or using or abusing substances is isolation. But right now, you see it's almost patterned that the isolation is available. So think about it like this, a good majority of our children go to school every single day, Monday through Friday, and are at school for 7-8 hours a day, sometimes longer if they're involved in extracurricular activities. But now that they're home, when your kid is in school, they come home, maybe you eat dinner, you have a couple of conversations for a couple of minutes, maybe an hour if you're lucky, you're off to different things, and then they go off to their rooms and they basically are there until you see them the next morning. That's kind of your average teenage mode. Well, right now, they're in their rooms a lot longer. It may feel normal because you're not used to seeing them for an extended length of time like that. Parents who have the opportunity to work from home are doing that and absorbed in that and working from home. And then you tag school and all those other things and all those other responsibilities on top of it, it can create a level of stress. So, isolation is a big part of that. And I would say even more so now because the normal atmosphere of being isolated is something that we're experiencing right now. So getting your teen out of that room sometimes, or even the reverse, going in and poking your head in and saying hi and engaging, I think is a good thing. So looking out for isolation would be one of those things. The typical things such as, the blurry eyes, slurred speech, some of the physical things that you might see is important as well. Strange smells, marijuana especially, which is still a primary item that teens will use, it has a very distinct smell. So even those weird smells or attempts to mask a smell, such as a lot of air freshener or burning incense or candles or things like that, may be a sign that there's something else going on that you might want to check into.
Right. Again, we're joined today by Marvin Coleman. He's a vice president with Operation PAR here in Pinellas County. Marvin, just following up on that, if parents do recognize some, if they see some red flags, if they recognize some warning signs, what steps should they take?
Initial steps, what I always say is trying to have the conversation with the team. You're much better off trying to engage at that level and understand what's going on. Because the more information that you can get at that particular point, the better you're able to help your team. So engaging them through the conversation is really important, especially if you have a teenager who is in recovery, because we do have teens who are in recovery who may be really struggling at this particular point in time. So engage in the conversation. The next steps from there, based on what you get from that conversation or what you might suspect is happening at that point, would be definitely to reaching out to a professional who could definitely help you. And there are, again, a number of social service agencies here in the area that can help. 211 is a great resource for that information, because they carry the information for substance abuse, mental health issues. They also carry the resource information for homelessness and people who are dealing with homelessness right now, food kitchens, pantries, a lot of things that can support families. 211 has that information. Of course, Operation PAR being a resource as well too. They could contact us if they feel like their child is dealing with a substance abuse issue, and that number is 1-888-PAR-NEXT, PARNEXT. If they dial that number, they can definitely reach our call center, which is available 24 hours a day, where we can give guidance at that particular point as well too. And then even Pinellas County has a mobile crisis response team that is designed to respond to non-emergency issues. So that's run through PIMS here in Pinellas County, and their number 727-362-4424 is a great resource as well. So again, a plethora of different resources out there available here in Pinellas County. It's just a matter of knowing the numbers to dial and reaching out.
Great information there, Marvin. A couple of notes to our viewers. Marvin and I are in remote locations. I'm sure you can see that on the screen. I'm at the Emergency Operations Center in Largo, and Marvin, you're at your office in Pinellas Park?
I am. I stepped into the office here. I'm actually social distancing as well too, and I walked in the office today. Not very many people here, of course, respecting the social distancing that's going on right now.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit less social distancing right now, but I've got about a 20 by 40 room here by myself, so I'm in pretty good shape. This is an interactive program, and if you have questions for Marvin, if you have comments, if you want to participate, post your question to our Facebook page. We'll be on here for a little bit longer, and the way this is going to work is I have a colleague back at the marketing and communications office who will relay those any messages that come in to me. So you may hear a pause here while I'm reading my computer. You may hear a pause if I'm checking questions, and that's the reason why. Again, we're joined by Marvin Coleman. He's a vice president with Operation PAR here in Pinellas County, and we're discussing the increased risk of teens turning to substance abuse or just even abuse during the COVID-19 pandemic. Marvin, one of the things we discussed just before, you and I discussed off camera before the meeting started, is the increased risks associated with smoking cigarettes, marijuana, vaping, that would raise your potential for getting more sick if you did happen to contract COVID-19. And how would that relate to teens who smoke?
Well, there are things that are being looked at right now in regard to research for that. They've already been doing research on vaping, for example, since it has become a major issue in regard to teens who are using tobacco products and other products through vaping. And some of the things that has come out of that are the physical effects of that. Now, in general, when it comes down to teens, the physical impact of substances on their body oftentimes is very different and much more detrimental than the impact that that an adult might have, because a teenager's body is still developing, their brain is actually still growing, mid to late 20s. So all of those things are going to have a different impact. One of the things that they're looking at, especially with COVID-19 and the fact that that particular illness impacts the respiratory system, is the impact that it's having on individuals or teenagers who are smoking or vaping. Some of the things that have come out previously before COVID-19 is that vaping may create a scenario of lung atrophy or shrinking, and even cigarette smoking may create that atmosphere. Same thing with marijuana use and the negative impact of that on the respiratory system, just in smoking or anything that you might be inhaling from a substance type issue. So then when you put a respiratory illness on top of that, it makes you much more susceptible to potentially having a greater harm take place, or even have a more serious impact of COVID-19, based on the fact that your respiratory system is being compromised through the substance use in the mode that you're using it. So it is something definitely to be careful about. One thing I'll say is a lot of teens, I have teenagers at home myself as well too, and a lot of teenagers almost feel as though they're bulletproof anyway. And even when it comes to COVID-19, as we saw when the epidemic first hit in Florida and spring break, and a lot of teenagers didn't feel it was a big deal or not something that would impact them. It was something that impacted older individuals, and that it didn't have much of an effect. But it's really the contrary, that it is something that can definitely have a negative impact on teens, and lifelong repercussions. But not only that, a teenager being exposed to it and not having a whole lot of symptoms could possibly take that illness home to mom, dad, grandmother, older individuals, or people with compromised immune systems who may suffer from a greater effect based on the exposure that a teen may have had. So it is a serious thing, not only for the teen's personal health, but also for other individuals. I have a friend who actually is a singer, sings nationally, and she was discussing how that might even impact, if you get the illness, no matter what age you are, how that might impact your ability to sing, because of what you need along the lines of lung capacity to be able to do that. And these are the type of things that they don't think about. The teenagers don't really think about that. A lot of people don't think about the impact at that level. So, my hope, especially if we have teens who are watching today, is that they're thinking about some of those repercussions and some of those negative consequences of just exposure, and how they can mitigate that.
Right. A lot of good information there, Marvin. And you made the point that, teens also have to think about the risk of being a carrier and impacting our more vulnerable populations. And I think, we all have a public responsibility to minimize our exposure, and follow the social distancing guidelines, to not put, even if you're young, even if you're healthy, even if if you run 10 miles a day, you could put somebody else at risk. So that's a really important reminder. With teenagers, I'm going to break this to you. You probably don't know this, but teens like to drink, some of them. Mm. And, they're home now more often. They may be home without mom and dad there. Talk about the risk of teens drinking more at home, and how that might be addressed with this extra time that they have.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because it is something that is already a risk, especially with teenagers who may be in recovery. But just being there overall over that extended length of time could pose that risk for drinking alcohol or engaging at that particular point. They have more time in the home, less supervision, believe it or not, while they're home, because a lot of times mom, dad, or guardians may be busy working or doing other things. So it could, you couple that with the level of isolation that is being normalized right now with teens, it could create a very bad scenario with drinking. Some of the things that I encourage, especially parents or guardians who are in a home with a teen who is in recovery, especially from alcohol, and who has drank before, if you notice has a drinking problem, to try and secure even the alcohol in a particular way to where you don't have the teen tempted or triggered by that use with all the other things. For other teens as well, I think being mindful of out your own personal alcohol consumption as a adult, as a parent or guardian, as well as being mindful of the impact and the impression that it's having on them, I think is really, really important, because you're not seeing less in regard to drinking and the exposure. You're not seeing less. You're seeing about the same level from what we can tell thus far, if not more.
Again, we're joined today by Marvin Coleman. He's a vice president with Operation PAR here in Pinellas County, and we're discussing the increased risk of teens turning to substance abuse during the COVID-19 pandemic. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left. Again, this is an interactive program. If you have questions, if you have comments, please send them in. Please post to our Facebook page, and they'll get relayed to me. Marvin, with isolation, no matter what age we're talking about, but certainly with teens, comes the potential for depression. What if parents notice signs of increased isolation, possible depression? What would you recommend parents to do?
Well, I will say there are a lot of strategies right now, and I tell parents all the time now that there's an opportunity through this distancing. The social distancing comes from everyone who's exterior to the family, but the family itself doesn't have to socially distance from each other. As a matter of fact, this is a great opportunity to engage. I've played a number of board games that I haven't played in years with my kids, with my teenagers over the last several weeks. And I would encourage that as well, too, as well as a lot of other things that you can do to kind of get your teenager or your child really engaged at that point to minimize the isolation. Because if you think about it, teenagers in particular, when it comes to their social circle, their friends are the most important people on the planet. It moves at about puberty. It moves from really family centered and focused to peers, friends. So taking the opportunity to really understand that and know that they're being isolated from their friends a lot of times. And sure, social media has helped that tremendously, but they're also coming from an atmosphere where they're used to being with their friends and other teens for 7, 8 hours a day. And now that has been basically diminished and stripped down a bit. So being able to really understand that and even hopefully replace some of that social interaction that they had with teens with that social, good, solid interaction at home. Number of strategies that you can use. This is a great opportunity to teach your teen, if they don't already know how to cook, or how to engage in other activities like that. Maybe there's house work, chores, different things like that. If you say chores, a lot of times that's a deal breaker. But however, teaching your teen how to do particular things, maybe it's a great time for them to redecorate their room or paint and do different things like that in order to really keep them engaged and keep their minds moving is a good strategy to follow, because true indeed, just like you said, the isolation can present an issue of depression, all of the change, all of the stress teenagers and children go through, all of the stress that adults go through at this particular time as well too. And then when you look at what adults might be dealing with, and the impact of an adult dealing with a level of stress, and then that kind of rolling down to impacting the teen, it's really important to look at some strategies that you can follow to really engage and really lock in.
That's really some great suggestions. This can be looked upon as an opportunity for parents and their children to bond, to teach a new skill. Maybe to catch up on reading, like you said, redecorate a room. There is that ability to make the best of a difficult situation. Are there any tips for helping your teen steer clear of drugs and alcohol that you would offer?
Yeah, and it's COVID-19 makes it a little challenging for some of those tips right now, but I still think that they all ring pretty true. One of the things, and especially going into this time of year, I usually, with some of the school systems that we work with, go in and talk to parents and through student systems programming, talk to parents about some of the tips that they can use over the summer, because we do notice an increase in drug use, alcohol use, experimentation, things like that over the summer. We do notice that children oftentimes, or teenagers, may get involved in criminal activity during that time as well too, and a good majority of time that's due to boredom, not having anything to do. So I would say being able to really look at what resources are available out there. A little hard right now with COVID-19, but there are still things that can be done out there? What are some of those resources to keep your child active and keep them engaged and keep them involved that they might do? A lot of things that are online that they could actually engage in. My teenagers, I've been encouraging them to look online for different things that they can do, even classes for things that they're interested in. My oldest son is interested in computers and programming. There are a number of free classes. YouTube is like the new university. So a number of free classes that they can do to learn, download free programs and learn how to do little things on the computer, programming, graphic arts, things like that, music, all of those things that teens are interested in. They can find some of those things online. And then there are some programs that are still out there available that are providing those services on a face-to-face basis, but of course recognizing and respecting the social distancing out there. So it may take you a little bit of time to hunt some of those things down. But I do encourage that, because one of the major strategies is being busy, keeping your teen engaged, involved in those type of activities, busy activities.
Right. Right.
Being able to volunteer as well, I think is really great. There are a number of programs and places that could use some volunteers out there as well. So even volunteering, teenagers need it for their graduation as well too, for some of those community service hours, and volunteering be a great time to do that as well too.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important also for parents to remember that exercising is allowed. Social distancing is strongly advised and encouraged, but your kids can get out and they can run, they can bike. Now they can go to the beach. So there are opportunities to get outside of the house and get physical exercise. We have a question that came in from a viewer. What online resources would you recommend for someone who's concerned about the exposure from at in-person AA meetings this time of year?
Exposure. Well, that's a great point, and I wish that I had the resources in front of me. But there are some AA meetings, and if you do go on to the website for AA, they do have some listings for virtual classes or virtual support systems that they're doing. A lot of sponsors currently right now through AA are doing their own groups, almost like we do our some of our counseling and treatment online. So I would encourage them to look at those online support groups that are going to provide those type of services available for them. They can probably find some of that information at 211. But since the question has come up, it'll definitely be something that we'll want to put in one of our resources as well too. But staying connected, of course, to your sponsors with AA and NA, they would be the best place to gather that information for resources for virtual classes, things like that online, and support systems. In that system, they're already usually connecting up with their sponsor and talking with their sponsor via phone. So I would recommend that they continue to do that as much as possible, because that's going to also reinforce the support in the support system that they need.
Very good. Again, we've been talking to Marvin Coleman. He's a vice president with Operation PAR here in Pinellas County. Marvin, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. We coordinated media interviews on this topic yesterday with you with Channel 8, Fox 13, and WFLA Radio, and I read one of those pieces and it came out very well. Is there any parting information that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, the parting information I would give is that we're a resilient people, and especially here in Pinellas County, and that even though things may look really tough right now with COVID, you can survive this. And this is something that I think we've adjusted well to so far, and continued efforts, continuing to make sure. I know we use the word social distancing a lot, but I like to kind of flip that term a little bit. Instead of saying being socially distant, you're more physically distant, but stay socially connected. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to do that. Staying socially connected actually helps us stay supported. It helps those individuals who are dealing with depression, or maybe even tempted or triggers for alcohol and drug use, to actually have the support systems that they need out there. Use all of those resources, friends, family. Check in on your friends and on your family as well through this process, and add support, because it's a good way to gain support is to give support as well too.
Very good advice. And I'll follow up by mentioning that Pinellas County has a wide array of COVID-19 information on our website, covid19.pinellas.org. If you go to that page, the second button on the page is a Get Help link. And if you scroll down that page, you'll see a category for mental health and emotional support. And within that material there, that information there are quite a few helpful links. Marvin, thanks again for joining us. I'm glad to have gotten to spend a little bit of time with you here the last couple of days remotely. And remember, to all of you out there, parents and anyone else paying attention, if you're feeling isolated and you feel like you need help, reach out. Thank you very much. I'm Tony Fabrizio of Pinellas County Marketing and Communications.
Thank you.